Alright, so let's go on to our last view here. So we're going to do the last one, which is going to be the 3/4 view, right? So with the 3/4 view, we're going to use the same projection. So this is where we're kind of looking at the real three-dimensional view, right? So same sort of thing. We're going to look at these proportions here. There's the head, and we use that. Now this time, when we're looking at the center, we're looking at something more like this. So if you look at how everything sweeps around here, I'm looking at it more like a three-dimensional view. So again, we're going to draw the chin down like this, and we're going to go ahead and draw this coming down this way. So it might, certain things might sweep across this way. And so when we're drawing things, the human figure or anything in animation, right, we're talking about things moving in these arc patterns. So the same thing with the swing of the head. It's when you're tracking how it moves, it's going to move in this sort of arc-like fashion. So we're going to draw the neck. Here's the neck, and then we'll go ahead and finish off all the other things. So when we're using those same proportions, again, we're going to define those areas like the nose. So the nose is going to come around here. Flatter areas this time. So I'm going to start with the nostril. We're not going to see much of the left nostril. We're going to see or the right nostril in this case, if you're talking about right side of the screen. But we're not going to see much of the reverse side there. So we're going to define the, I like to start with the larger shapes first. So, here's this flatter plane. It kind of splits up into two, again, over here and here. So you might have seen like mannequins that are constructed in this way, very sort of flatter areas like that. And we're defining that, that invisible mask area there, which is, where everything in the skull kind of pushes back. So it's just kind of giving it this geometric form. And then for the face too, so we have these other proportions here that we'll do, the chin, the mouth. So everything runs along, remember that center line there. And then these lines that go across, so the projected lines, they're going to kind of swing here, even though we might have this come across here. This is going to swing this way, right? So everything's going to be in a arc-like three-dimensional sweep. So you look at kind of this curve here in the circle, and then kind of imagine how that affects all the other objects, like the ear or facial parts. The ear kind of comes into the same proportions, right, and the head, right? Do the same thing here. And we're going to do sort of the cheeks. So the cheeks kind of have their own plane that comes down here, right? So it's sort of like dark light, right? So this is the darker area, and this is the lighter area. This is the lighter area. This is the darker area. So that's kind of how it happens with the planes. They sort of counteract each other. There's a plane going in one direction or the other, and the light, the lighting will hit one or the other in shadow or in light. Right? So upper lip's going to be in shadow. This part, the area of the mouth, is going to be in light. Underneath the lip, they'll be in shadow. And then you have the chin here, which will be in light. So you're kind of having, this sort of opposite effect. Everything has a light, dark effect when you're looking at breaking things up like this. So there, I'm going to go ahead and define that. And so, now that I have all those kind of proportions tied together, I'm going to put the eyes in. And so, here we have enough information now, right, to finish off that drawing with the right proportions. The whole point of this is, we don't go right into drawing all the features. We want to kind of identify the areas so that they all are accurate, right? So otherwise, you could be putting a lot of detail into rendering eyes and nose, and then you take a step back from your canvas or your paper, and then you notice things are not in proportion. Like, I drew a really nice nose and in the mouth, but they're not. One is way too far apart from the other. I drew the face too long, or I drew the ear in the slightly wrong place. And so you don't really notice that until, either you step away from the drawing, or you really kind of do these exercises of really getting to understand, and some of this, like, Some of this comes more naturally for other people. Some people can capture it without doing these proportions, but when you're doing complex things like animated characters, or other types of things that require a lot of accuracy, like comic books, when you're doing a lot of dynamic poses, things like that, and you don't always have somebody to draw, right? You have to create a lot of things. You have to create a lot of fiction around characters, like wardrobe, costumes, all these kind of things. So when you're doing these proportions, it really helps because a lot of times you're not given a lot of detail for reference. So you sort of have to imagine a lot of the things and make a lot of things work that are not necessarily in front of you. So by understanding the proportions, you're kind of predicting certain things about the drawing that's not necessarily going to happen unless you have somebody in front of you to draw from. But a lot of, even then, if you have to imagine a costume that you don't have, or if you have to put somebody in a dynamic pose that they can't do, you're going to need to understand kind of this as it relates to the figure later. Right now, we're just kind of doing the head. And also, when we start doing expressions and things like that, we're going to want to understand, how do the different proportions of these face, how does the face move into different expressions? So that's another kind of thing that is helpful when you're breaking the face down in these things, that you can kind of adjust all those different aspects there as you do the proportion. So, for example, like if the eyebrow goes down, you can reshape this invisible mask. And so when we get into the facial expressions and things like that, a lot of these things that hold the proportions together are going to be really important to do that.